Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out.
totally. I appreciate you finding the time to do this. I really like seeing what you've done with some of your podcasts and the people you work with.
Right on. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a labor of love. In fact, you're in the educational sector. I'm an IT guy by day for a large school
Nice.
district in Kansas City. So I understand that world.
Oh, totally. And I think we have some similar experiences in that I came from education, 20 years recognizing that I'm too young for retirement, and then decided, how do I make this valuable to everyone others?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it. I want to get into how we've evolved to this point in your life. And to begin that, I want to know 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out this pandemic, how long it was going to last, the ramifications. How did you get through that time period? And how did it change you?
So I realized with the pandemic that I enjoy virtual work. I've always enjoyed being able to make a difference, not being tied to a desk.
Yeah.
And as you know, education is very location specific. It's very direct service, if you want to call it that. And the pandemic gave us an opportunity to realize the difference. You know, the possibility of what if we didn't do it this way.
Yeah.
It's like we talk about reimagining schools and reimagining the classroom. Let's reimagine the entire ecosystem of what it looks like. So before pandemic days, I was deputy superintendent in the South Bronx. I had responsibility for a school district that was the a failing district. Let's just call it what it is. In terms of academically, student performance wise, the kids were not proficient. What I did, and my strategy being technology, is figure out how do we market ourselves the good? How do we entice students that want to be part of that greatness? And then let's attract them and their families. And so it was all about creating a web presence, building social media, those type of things that took me to the chancellor's office, where I was a procurement officer at the Office of Non-Public Schools. I don't know if you know this, but in New York, the education budget is about over $3 billion for over 1 million students.
Wow.
Those students are changing schools quite often. And as they change schools, that impacts a school's budget.
Yep.
But if you know how to leverage it, particularly with the influx of asylum seekers, we're able to see how budgets can be different. We're able to see opportunity for small businesses that have an education solution. And so my pivot was realizing I don't want to return to the office.
Yeah.
You know, it's in some ways it's not safe at the time that it was being suggested by the mayor. In other ways, it was like, I can do so much more. And so I've created my own consultancy strategy, education sales strategy specifically, helping entrepreneurs, helping businesses figure out how to do more with less, how to be a better, how to enter the market in a way that is really game changing. I've said a lot, but let me just share. So Got Goals is dedicated to informing entrepreneurs and sales staff about the mindset of New York City government buyers. So after partnering with us, our clients speak eloquently, negotiate with confidence, and build relationships that extend beyond mere transactions. Each of our solution-focused coaching sessions is designed to prioritize the next step for success, enabling students to achieve milestones quickly, recover swiftly from setbacks, and make impactful decisions that drive their business forward.
So if we were to be put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day and one of the kids said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you break that down and answer them?
I talk to people to make them better.
Okay.
I am all about inspiring action. And so it's about motivating, informing. Our mission is to eradicate the systemic barriers that prevent people from being excluded. And so I want to provide access to knowledge and information, and also my social network to figure out how we can leverage one another.
Yeah. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Police officer.
Okay. That's what I
Yeah,
wanted to do. I saw
yeah,
Chips as a kid and yeah, I get it.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I actually was a law enforcement officer for 6 years. Came up from patrol to communications, working in the back, talking to people, and then went and decided, I don't like any of this. I want to go ahead and rule the world. And so I was a co-watch commander for the New York City mayor's office. And what that looks like is a coordinator of emergency resource management.
Okay.
Imagine a plane coming down and all the different people that are impacted by that. And so my responsibility would be to coordinate the resources and to help folks figure out how to get the best support to the right location.
So, how did this happen? Take me back to your childhood. What were the seeds that made you want to not only help people, but to get an education, public service? How did all of these seeds get sown into you?
Sure. I would say my mom, like all of us, right? Mom said, go study computers. And I said, no, the computers, yes, I do it very well. And I know technology extremely, how to leverage it, how to make it inclusive in our daily practices. But I thought I could do so much more. Then, as I evolved, I figured out that the ed tech vendor pipeline is extremely small. It's not enough information about how to share innovative technology solutions. And so, how we got here is my desire to speak with more people, to be able to share more best practices. One of my own personal pivot points is acknowledging from the procurement standard. I had responsibility for a budget of $44 million supporting 900 public schools, non-public schools, excuse me. These non-public schools are our faith-based schools, they are independent schools, they are private day schools. All of these schools, for the most part, are all funded by students. And let's recognize that the students that need the most help are often systemically barred from getting that help. And so my point of entry is helping educators understand where to find the money and helping entrepreneurs and sales staff understand how to talk to the educators. I think a key discovery for me is my college mentor saying, there's no money in writing. Have you ever heard of that? There's
Yeah.
no
Oh,
money
yeah.
in writing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, there is. I write for money.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So, talk to me a little bit about who heroes have been for you. Who's been an inspiration?
Sure. I would say my first hero definitely is a David Dinkins, former mayor of New York City, and what he has done to put resources for young people. Specifically, I was part of a youth advisory council, which helped the commissioner at that time, Richard Murphy, decide where money should be spent for young people. And so I was part of the team that accompanied the staff to evaluate services. I'll never forget there was this meeting of all the city agency heads, and Richard Murphy said, "Come with me." I'm like, "Where am I going? I don't, he's like, "Just come with me." I'm sitting at this big round table. All of these heads of agencies, the commissioners of different agencies were there. Even the police commissioner was at the table. And they're talking about what they're doing for young people and how they're spending money. And at one point, he looked back over his shoulder and he said, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "You guys are doing it wrong. How many of you have ever asked young people what services would work for them, what they're interested in?" And he's like, "Well, tell us at the table." I must have been 17, 18. What happens at that age? You think you know everything. But more importantly, you know something that the other people at the table do not know, which is I'm using these services, and what you're thinking you're doing and how it's being delivered may not necessarily be synchronous. And so let's talk about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, who would you love to meet and talk to?
Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama, and I would also say I want to throw in Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there are powerful women who are really have a platform of authority in terms of audiences that listen. And when you have that type of following, what you say makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in the same respect, I am developing that following to help people understand here's what you need to say, here's how you need to say it, here's what we can do to build an empire of greatness around whatever.
Yeah. So speaking of building greatness, what is it every day that motivates you to get up to do the work that you do? Not only the work to help people, but to also evolve yourself as a person. What is that for you?
Well, I got to say and share just because it is a key challenge, the daily struggle of major depression that I struggle with. And I also have post traumatic stress from September 11th because I was down there as part of recovery. So I oftentimes do not want to get up. I struggle very much to find the motivation to make a difference. And so having conversations like these really do help me stay focused and remember where I make valuable contributions, because that's what it's really about. For me, it's about how do I inspire action in a way that is meaningful and valuable. And so, as the majority of folks in the world I know, coffee is my saving grace. And so I love good coffee, Colombian coffee specifically, dark roast. It is will always the scent will always wake me up and get me going. And so that's, I think, having a flow and a process, which a isn't something that everyone falls into.
Yeah.
So my depression is all about self-worth
Yeah.
and doubt. And I think so many people share similar experiences of, am I really enough? How do I contribute? And where do I stand out? And so that's where I look to make a really significant difference as an empire.
So speaking of standing out, of all of the things that you've done and overcome and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Definitely the success stories of my clients.
Yeah.
And I'll have someone who I'll share who has a really great product. They are new to New York City and not familiar with all the different nuances that happen in the education ecosystem. And there are many different small things that really make or break a product, particularly in the education sector. And so a recent one is, as of, because of the pandemic, or as a result of the pandemic, the Department of Education locked down their system and only allows approved vendors to actually have access to students. What this change did is many programs and products that have always been utilized that never had to go through a vetting process, all of a sudden newly became familiar with, oh, the Department of Education Information Technology wants to review our program and make sure that we have a security policy, and it makes sure that we have a protect students and student information. All this said, though, when the change happened, the product went from working wonderfully in its schools that it worked in to the following year, this current school year and future school years, not being able to work on any student device.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand why. And of course, as an education industry, student privacy is a really important concern. But I gotta tell you, we weren't really aware of it and as on top of it until recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, how do we really protect our students?
Yeah.
And so we give emails to students, and so students are able to be communicated with, but an outside person outside of the school system is not able to use that email.
Yeah.
So what happened was the technology provider was using student emails to log into the platform and was trying to send two-factor authentication to the student email, and it would never go through. And of course it's not going to go through. That's, you're on the outside. You're not supposed to be going through.
Yeah.
So here you are trying to be this great protector with two-factor authentication, but the student will never get that second factor, and they couldn't access the system. And I had to explain to them and help them and nuance those days of what you've done before previously will not work, and here's how we can work through it to become something better and bigger.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, you run into an 18-year-old version of you, you can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give your younger self?
I would give the advice to take the time to slow down.
Yeah.
I would give the advice in this day and age, as of today, that everything I touch is gold.
Yeah.
There's a generational self-worth, generational, are we doing enough? And I find that we really are.
Yeah.
But it's also about who do we talk to revalidate and to confirm that we're doing enough, right? And that's where this conversation gets to happen, Joe. I appreciate the opportunity to share the message of good news, but also to share with entrepreneurs and sales staff that if you want to figure out how to build your network, how to really make a difference, where the information gaps are, there's so many assumptions. And I would tell you that even between you and I, we may have assumptions about education that remain unchecked. But I'm here and I'm available.
Yeah.
And I have 20 years in the education sphere, from classroom to leadership building to district building to chancellor's office. And I enjoy sharing. If anything, I want to say the younger me at 18 was afraid to speak up and ask for help. Meanwhile, I realized, ask for what you need.
Yeah.
The universe will provide it.
Yeah.
And this
Absolutely.
is case in point. Thank you for providing this platform and for sharing and just asking the intelligent questions that you do, because it really does make a difference to providing resource for so many others.
Yeah, and that's what we need for sure. So at the end of the day, is the one that's the driving force behind your world and helping people get to better places in education. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your
Right.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm a giver. I'm definitely someone who has resource, abundant resource that wants to figure out how to make a difference. I'll tell you, when I left, and my most recent realization of what's happening in this world post pandemic, follow the money. There is resource upon resource upon resource and opportunity to interact, yet we just don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
And oftentimes we don't know how to do it because we don't speak to the right people, right? Or we speak to people who won't speak to us.
yeah,
I'm here. I want to speak to you. I want to solve pain points. I want to go ahead and have conversations like these that help people realize, that's something I haven't thought about. I'll give you a case in point, right?
yeah,
Real success story with the client who was invoicing and realized that they had become cash flow problems because in government, you need to deliver the work, have it certified, and then you can get paid for the work. For some, that's a long timeline in terms of when you get your money, right? If you're not going to invoice until after all the work has been delivered and then it's certified on top of that. So let's talk in a school frame. If you're going to start something in September and the work may not end until June, you're going a whole 9 months without cash flow, but you're delivering a product.
yeah,
You do know that the merchant controls the invoice process. And so you can choose to invoice more than just once a year. And so instead of invoicing annually as a school term, you can invoice quarterly, or you can choose to invoice by semester. That really transformed the opportunity of what this small vendor was able to deliver for their future terms. Because then now, instead of waiting for the entire school year to finish and then get money to then future endeavors for and expand to future schools in the next school year, they were able to do it every time they invoiced to have some resource to go ahead and build product and build for future. I totally think that enough vendors don't realize the invoice process is something they control.
yeah. Yeah, that's very well said. So let's carry that baton. Everything on the screen here is a good way to reach out and to scan the QR code, set up a Calendly appointment. Is there anywhere else people can be steered to reach out and to hire you and to get more information?
The Calendly is the first point. How I like to do things is I like to talk to people, just like we're doing here. I like to, just chit chat and see if there's a match, see
Yeah,
what value I can offer. If there's none, that's fine. I am totally comfortable with acknowledging that my limit of information is somewhere else and how to point you in that direction.
yeah,
I'm totally for that. But at the same time, though, I have found that many people I speak to recognize the gap in learning.
yeah,
And there's a gap between what I, as entrepreneur, as this solution provider, have and deliver in a technology solution. And there's a gap in what the student and classroom actually needs. Another success story I'll say is a technology provider which does great work, right? But they didn't realize their program would only work if the student has a one-to-one device. And so can I tell you how many schools that they were using a computer tech lab, or they were using some type of laptop system that wasn't one-to-one, and the time it took for teachers to get students the actual device, to get them online, to do all of the login, sign in process, that was time away from instruction. And that's a no-no in
Yeah.
the classroom.
Yeah.
We always want to focus on time on task. That time on task needs to be purposeful. And so it wound up being a 40-minute class that came down to 20 minutes of instruction because of all the other things that had to happen.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why don't you just change your character profile for your customer, who you're looking at the schools, right? It totally solved the issue, but they need to know to think about that one-on-one marriage with device is a key element of their character profile to who they sell to.
Yeah.
Once they made that shift,
Yeah.
they was able to have a 40-minute time on task,
Yeah.
and principals and teachers loved it. I think those are the type of ways. So it's definitely scheduling time to chat with me. Let's figure out how things can evolve from there, and bringing value. I do I would say I am looking to work with local economic development corporations and offer how to sell to government workshops in a means to talk to more people. And so totally folks who have access to provide a larger and larger stages, I'm interested in speaking with, like yourself. Thank you for that.
Yeah. No, you've illustrated so many wonderful examples, Maurice. I love your energy and everything that you're doing. Keep doing the great work. Thank you for taking a minute out for the show. I appreciate it, sir.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, sir. Take care.